right. Good afternoon and good morning and good evening to everyone, and welcome to the Champions of Human Resources Management Mentoring Programs webinar for the month of December 2025, our final in the series for this year. So, congratulations to all of you who are joining us for this final edition for the year. It has been a very interesting and hopefully impactful year for you, as it has been for us at Learning Impact, and for me personally, being the convener of this program and, coming here every month and facilitating these webinars, um, sharing some of my thoughts and some of my experiences, and of course, listening and learning and improving along the way based on the insights and the feedback that you have all contributed. I would like to use this opportunity to, of course, welcome our new joiners, people who are with us for the first time. You know yourselves, I'm not going to call you out. And it is to thank you for accepting our invitation to be here and for being here with us today. We hope that and we believe that it will be time well spent and invested. We also like to, of course, as usual, thank our existing members who have been here very well with us, some of whom have been here from the inception 2 years ago up to date. So thank you for your commitment, and thank you for also expanding our network by inviting others, inclusive of some of those who are here right now. And our goal is to continue to build this network and this community to support the development of our very dear HR profession. I see that, yeah, that's my office name that is still on the screen, so I'm just making that change. As usual, we would start off with light introductions, introducing our company, Learning Impact, and then talking a little about the Champions of HR program that we are here for. So let's start with that introduction. Of course, today is, the Christmas edition. So you see, I'm on my Christmas gear, ready to go. So, if you have any Christmas gear with you, please feel free to put it on. I'm sure my colleagues are like, oh my God, Bisha never does this. Well, Bisha is evolving. All right, so let's start off with a conversation about Learning Impact. Learning Impact is based in Nigeria, in Abuja, Nigeria's federal capital. It was founded in 2010 by myself, and it was really out of a pursuit of taking all that I had learned in the corporate world, first as an investment banker, subsequently as a pension fund manager, and then as a human resources leader, to the rest of the world. And primarily at that time, I think our vision was best described as to create solutions that will help organizations and people to be better, and to ultimately export Afrocentric content and solutions in organizational and people management from Nigeria to Africa and to the rest of the world. And I think that that vision is still true till today, and we are in the pursuit of that vision. To enable us achieve that vision, we deploy a number of solutions and services around corporate training and coaching, around strategy and organizational development consulting. We also build and provide HR technology solutions for our clients. We have a very strong proposition around e-learning and knowledge management solutions, with our flagship solutions being the e-paper vendor and the online Efiko. And of course, very dear to my heart, as I always say, is life skills education and resources, where we intervene in the lives of the children and youth, providing them board games, storybooks, interactive learning via lifeskillsafrica.com, all in a bid to support what we believe is a deficit in our educational enterprise, not just in Nigeria, in Africa, but globally, where there is not enough focus on life skills, the skills that we really need to be productive at work, skills like leadership and emotional intelligence, skills like creativity and innovation, communication, presentation and writing skills, as well as skills like financial literacy and political literacy, which is really about meaningful participation in civic and political affairs. These are all life skills that we as adults need. And unfortunately, our educational institutions do not prioritize these skills. We prioritize STEM, and which is good. But you will find out that when you've gotten the degree in engineering, you've gotten the degree in medicine, you've gotten the degree in law and in business and in data analytics, you would need to be a good leader. You will need to have emotional intelligence. You will need to apply creativity and innovation to solving problems and making decisions. You will need to write and to speak confidently in your organization. And the best place to learn that is not when you get into the organization. The best place to learn it is when you were learning your STEM along the way. So these are some of the ideas behind our company. I already spoke to you about our vision and our commitment, and that pursuit of helping organizations and people to be better. We want to transform our clients. We want to transform our society in a positive way. And we want to build it around Afrocentric content and resources, which really speaks to an African centered and well nuanced solutions that speak to our needs and to our contexts in a very practical way. The Champions of HR program is really a network of young to mid-career human resources management professionals that, as well as people who have, more experience in human resources, that want to move from being operational to being more strategic. So the goal of the program is to build the strategic HR capabilities of our people. And I have a nice announcement at the end. I'm going to leave it to the end about the future of this program and where we are going and how that future is very exciting and how we would love you to be a part of that future. Our program consists of a monthly webinar, which takes place like today being the third Saturday of the month. And we have been doing this since October 2023. It also includes an active WhatsApp group, a Facebook group, as well as a LinkedIn group where we network, exchange ideas, and continuously learn and support each other. Okay, so that essentially is about the Champions of HR program. Like I said, we are blessed by the presence of very experienced human resources leaders who join us on the program too. So you're welcome as always. But our focus is really to support every HR professional, especially those who are in the young to mid-career HR, and those who are hungry to learn and apply the skills of strategic human resources management. So, with all those introductions behind us, I can see we have a good number of participants, so we are ready to go. I'd like to also thank my team from Learning Impact who works behind the background or worked in the background to ensure that all of this is a huge success. And thank you all for your continuous commitment to the program. So let's jump into today's content. Today we are discussing the subject of reward management. And I guess the end of the year is always a great time to think about reward, isn't it? I mean, so that's interesting, yeah. So we are discussing reward and reward management at the end of the year, a time when people think about their rewards, a time when people think about how much better they would like to be rewarded, at a time when organizations have to make decisions about people's reward going into the future. So I guess that the end of the year is a good time to be discussing reward management. And as usual, we will be starting off with exploring some of the theoretical and scientific evidence that supports the practice of reward management. At Learning Impact, we're an evidence-based practice. We just don't follow what the fad is or what is trending, but we like to anchor everything we do, including our training and the advice that we give to our clients around what the science says, what does the research say, what do the theories in organizational behavior tell us about this subject It is important because when you go to a hospital, you do not expect the doctor to just do what the latest is. You do expect the doctor to do what is scientifically proven. So, in the same way as management consultants and learning impact, we want to do what is scientifically backed. So we always start off with that conversation. And as usual, we believe in the why, what, and how methodology of teaching. So, of course, we will start off with what is reward management and why is it important. Then we will go into more details of what it is by exploring the drivers of reward and then learn about how to develop a reward architecture for your organization. And we will end with a conversation about total reward management, which is an extension of that architecture, focusing on how to build an effective reward management system that focuses on the total reward concept. So there is our agenda, ladies and gentlemen. As usual, we want you to put your microphones off for now. There will be opportunities for us to interact and ask questions. We have a nice activity that we will do somewhere in the middle that will get us thinking about reward and the impact on our organizations and how to create that appropriate architecture in our organizations. And in between, I will pause and ask if you've got questions or clarifications, and I will be monitoring the chat on this platform, and so that if anybody is has any thoughts or any questions, you can put it on the message board on the chat here, and I will try and pick it up in between my delivery. Also to mention very quickly that there is a WhatsApp group for the Champions of HR program. If you are a new joiner or you have been here before and you haven't joined that group, I'll be asking my colleagues to post the link to connect you to the group, and you can be connected to the group and you can join the group and continue to learn with us. The group is very, very powerful because what it does is that it helps us to continue the conversations every single day. There's something new, there's something interesting that we're putting out there, and people are making contributions and so on just to build our HR capabilities. So please click on the link there if you want to join the Champions of HR WhatsApp group. We really encourage you to do so. So let's proceed now with the theoretical foundations and some of the scientific evidence that supports the practice of reward management. On the screen, there are about 5 or 6 theories that are well established. The first one is a theory in economics, and it just shows you the power of the things we do in HR and how important and how linked they all are. Economic theory teaches us about the law of demand and supply, a simple law that says that the level of pay that people get tends to rise when labor is scarce, and it tends to fall when there is excess supply of labor. So, very simply, if you have a scarce skill, like we talked about when we were discussing succession planning as well as talent management, then that scarce skill will certainly attract a higher level of reward. That is why football players, soccer players, basketball players earn such huge amounts of money because they have scarce skills. There are only 11 people, 22 people who can make it to the national team of a country. There are only 48 countries playing in the World Cup. So if you think about that, you're talking about 960 of the most talented people in the world. So it is no surprise that they attract such a huge premium in terms of the income they earn. And ditto for the teams that play in the Champions League and in the Premiership and in the Scudetto and so on and so forth. Yeah. I always like to use all these soccer examples, not because I watch soccer all the time, but because I understand that performance is best understood sometimes in that domain. And if we can transfer some of the insights in the sports world into the business and the organizational world, we would see such huge change in our culture and the results that we get. Efficiency wage theory says that people perform better when their wages are higher. Of course, People tend to perform better while when their wages are higher, up to a certain limit, of course. The law of diminishing returns sometimes sets in. Self-determination theory teaches us that in addition to wages, autonomy, relatedness, and competence also drive motivation and performance. And this starts to tell us about the fact that reward is not just about money, because up to a certain level, I mean, think about it. Some of the athletes in the world, I like to use the example of people like, look at what Samuel Eto'o is doing currently in Cameroon, trying to transform the FA there. It's not because of money. Here's someone who's made all the money in the world. Think about the efforts made by George Weah, the former president of Liberia, who at some point was the captain of the Liberian football team and was completely responsible for bankrolling that team. So he was paying for all the air travel. He was paying the fee, the appearance fees of all the players and paying for hotels and so on. It's not about everything is not always about money. So there are other things that motivate people. And self-determination theory and things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs point us to some of the science and some of the theories that explain what reward should also pay attention to beyond money. Equity theory teaches us that employees expect to be treated fairly and are motivated by the fact that they are treated fairly. And fairness is in relation to their fellow employees. Fairness is in relation to the exchange between them and the organization. And fairness is also in relation to the outside world, and that's why organizations do benchmark employee compensation surveys. That's why organizations talk about internal equity when it comes to reward, to ensure that people feel that people who are doing similar work to them are getting similarly paid. This theory, the next one, is really exciting. Agency theory. It's exciting because of people like me who are entrepreneurs. And it says that there is a gap between the entrepreneur and the employee, between the principal, the entrepreneur, and the employee as an agent. And that this gap creates needs that need to be addressed. It creates a gap in sense that, well, sometimes the employees feel like, well, it's not my business, it's Bishar's business, so let him worry about it. You know what I mean? And all I have to do is to come here and collect my salary, and that's a problem because that's not what you want. The entrepreneur did not set up the business so that he does all the work or she does all the work and then other people just coast. So it creates a tension because there is that perception that I am just a an agent, I am just a servant. It is not my business. And sometimes that creates some limits as to the extent of performance. Because what's the whole point of reward? The whole point of reward is to align people so that they will perform and achieve results. Finally, human capital theory, very interestingly, points us in another of the qualitative aspects of reward, that better human capital produces better results that inevitably drives higher pay levels. And this is very powerful because at the end of the day, we all want to be paid better. But where does pay come from? Pay comes from capacity. So it comes from human capital. What's the quality of the human capital? So it means that if you want results as an organization, then you want to attract and develop human capital. And I'm sure everybody says, yeah, that makes sense. But also, if you want higher pay levels for yourself as an individual, then it means that you've got to invest in your human capital. You've got to invest in asking yourself, how much am I contributing? Because it is the quantum of my human capital that becomes the contribution that I make into the organization that ultimately becomes the results and translates to the higher pay levels. Like our parents told us when we were growing up, money doesn't fall from trees. And it is exactly the same in our organizations. Human capital theory teaches us that it is human capital that increases salary. So if your salary hasn't increased or you think you're not earning as much as you can, ask yourself with brutal honesty, What is the quality of my human capital and the extent to which I'm contributing that human capital towards the real success of the organization? And I qualify it with the word real because sometimes people think that their contribution is to show up at work. People think that their contribution is to come and tick box that they are here. So people think that their contribution is the transport money that they paid to come to work or the inconvenience. After all, I am here from 8 o'clock to 5. That's not human capital. Human capital is what is it that the organization needs to achieve? And sometimes it's not just your work. It's like, oh, people come, like football again. My job here is just to be a defender. I was watching Sunday Olise talk yesterday, and he said something very profound. He said, at the end of the day in football, the priority is to score goals, and that any team it's easy to build a team that is strong defensively. It's easy to say we've got a good back four, we've got a solid libero, we've got an excellent goalkeeper, and so we prevent people from scoring. But that's not the goal of football. The goal of soccer is to score goals. So, and it's the same with the organization. So, some people play in the middle office and they play in the back office. They are in risk management, they are in HR, they are in admin, they are in procurement, they are in IT. And they say, look, I've done my own. And if we don't score goals, that's not my problem. But guess what? If you don't score goals, if somebody doesn't go and bring home the cow, and your own job is just to cut the cow and to dissect the cow, then there is always a limit to how much you will earn. So it's really important to think about that really what is the contribution that human capital is making towards the ultimate goal of the organization. So, with those theoretical foundations at the back of our minds, and I imagine that some of us are thinking deeply about some of the things I said, I hope you are, we would move on to now talk about defining what reward management is. Okay, so let's explore that. A simple definition. There are many ways, of course, in the social and behavioral and management sciences to define every single concept and construct, but I'll just like to keep it simple. Reward management consists of the philosophy, the policies, the strategies, and the practices that aim to ensure that the value of people and the contributions that people make are recognized and rewarded. So those powerful words, their philosophy, policies, strategies, practices, pay attention to them. And then those words, the value of the people and the contributions that they make. Very important. So we're thinking about what's the value of this human being? What is the contribution this human being has made? Because the value speaks to, okay, because when I hire you and give you a salary, I don't know your contribution. I only know your value. Then when you now come and you start performing, then I can now tell your contribution. And that is what now forms the basis for the increase in your reward, or the basis for the stagnation in your reward, or the basis for your exit from the organization. And then to ensure that they are both recognized, qualitative, and rewarded, quantitative. Reward management focuses on three fundamental questions, at least from my experience and my research. Question one: how do we value people and the contributions that they make? Question two: how do we recognize and reward that value? And very importantly, because reward management is part of a system of high performance work practices that ensures vertical and horizontal alignment of the organization. And I know I'm speaking big grammar now, but these are things we have covered in the Champions of HR program. How do we assess and improve this system on a continuous basis? Because, of course, it is a system, it's a living and breathing organism. It needs to be improved, it needs to be checked. And we have to do this on a continuous basis. So, my dear friends, that is a simple definition of reward management. I'm going to speak very quickly now about why reward management is important, and then I will pause so that I can get some feedback from you about what we have discussed so far around the theories of reward management, what reward management is, and of course, why it's important. So, why is it important? Um, Reward management helps us to attract and retain talent. It helps us to attract and retain the right people. Square pegs in square holes. If you don't have a reward system, if you haven't thought it through, if you just say, I'm just going to pay this person this, I'm just going to pay that person that, then here's what you're not going to be able to attract the right people, and you're certainly not going to be able to retain the right people. Of course, the purpose of everything we do in um, human resources management, all our high performance work practices, is really to drive performance and productivity. So this shows up really early when we think about why reward is important, why reward management is important, because we want to ensure the sustainable success of the organization. We want to ensure that people are productive and people perform and we achieve our results. And reward is one of the ways that we achieve this. Thirdly, of course, from a qualitative side, it bolsters motivation and engagement. It makes people happy. It makes people interested. It makes people motivated and engaged. The money they earn, the recognition they get, and the other things that are part of the value proposition of your organization that we will discuss when we talk about total reward management. It also very importantly promotes the right behaviors. And remember, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Someone said that wasn't said by Peter Drucker, and I said to you guys some months ago that it's okay if Peter Drucker didn't say it. Omagbishe Barrow is saying it. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So reward management helps you to promote the desired behaviors and culture in your organization. It also supports fairness. And remember, we talked about equity theory. People want to be treated fairly because there's a relationship between fairness and the perception of fairness and motivation. So it supports fairness and it also ensures compliance. Compliance meaning that there are regulatory and tax expectations that have to do with, so you're not working for yourself. So when you come, you work, you are working for Oga, and Oga in Aso Rock, needs to collect, because that's what government does. And throughout the history of society, that's the point. Government collects taxes from workers. In the proper understanding, those taxes are meant to be used to develop society, as is seen in developed societies in the US, in Canada, in Europe, in the UK, and in developed countries in the world. We see a close relationship between the work we do, the taxes we pay, and the extent to which our society is developed. Unfortunately, in our country, Nigeria, and I can speak confidently about this, we work, we pay taxes, but we do not see development. But hey, we have to comply so that we don't get our businesses closed down and we don't go to jail. Finally, um, good reward management enhances organizational brand and reputation. And I'll just go back to that previous point when I spoke about youth and I said about political literacy. Because at the end of the day, this is a conversation about political literacy. If we are paying taxes and we are complying and we are not getting good governance, then we need to be more politically engaged so that we can demand and get a higher level of performance from the political servants that we have placed to rule over us. But let's come back to reward management. I can speak political theory from now till next year, as my colleagues and my friends know very well. Um, Reward management also enhances organizational brand and reputation, meaning that if people perceive that if you have a reputation in the workplace that you are a well-paid organization, an organization that takes reward management seriously, an organization that, for example, always ensures that the employees are paid their salaries. I mean, because in our climate, there are many organizations and many employers who, delay payments of salaries unnecessarily while enjoying themselves and going on foreign trips and boat trips and yachts and cruises and having the time of their lives and renege on their commitment to their employees for months. And we've seen even the government as an employer at the local, state, and federal level do this. And that gives you a bad reputation. So if you have a good reward management practice, then you have a good brand and a good reputation. All right. So these are a number of reasons. They are not exhaustive, but again, from our experience, these are good reasons why you, as a human resources management professional, as an organizational leader, should be thinking seriously about the reward system that your organization has and asking yourself those three pertinent questions. Let's go back to those questions again. How do we value people and the contributions they make? How do we recognize and reward that value? And how do we assess and improve that system of value recognition and value rewarding? And how do we improve that process so that we can get the benefits of reward management, which we just discussed? So at this point, I'm going to pause as I promised, and I'm just going to listen to you, listen to your questions, listen to your comments, listen to your contributions to this powerful subject of strategic reward management. So far, what have we done? We've learned about some of the theoretical foundations to reward management. We've explored the law of demand and supply, self-determination theory, agency theory, human capital theory, efficiency wage theory. We also learned about what reward management is, the philosophy, the policies, the systems, and the procedures for ensuring that we can value people and we can reward and recognize them in line with their value and their contributions, and try to answer those three pertinent questions that we just spoke about. And then we just landed with 6 good reasons why you should pay more attention to reward management. So the floor is open. You can, I'm just going to check on the chat. I don't think anything has come in. It's been quiet on the chat, meaning that we've been listening, taking down notes, and we're ready to ask all our questions now. So let's jump in. Questions, comments, clarifications. The floor is open. It's Merry Christmas in advance. For those who are just coming, my name is Omagbishe Baro. I'm the Chief Executive of Learning Impact and the convener of the Champions of HR program. And today, you have joined us as we are exploring strategic reward management in continuation of our series on the Champions of HR program. So it's question time, it's interaction time. Go for it. All right. So it looks like, whew, no questions. What does that mean? Complete understanding, complete and utter confusion, or I've been talking to myself for the last 30 minutes. Fastest finger first. What do you think? Okay, let's see. Babatunde Badejo, thank you for your question. You say, can you provide practical ways or methods to make aha, to make reward management to promote desired behaviors and culture? Fantastic question. I'll give you a simple one. Many organizations, and we're coming to the practice of this right now, but I'm glad you asked this question, Babatunde. In fact, it's a chocolate question. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to go into my bag of chocolates, my virtual chocolates, and I'm going to send you a virtual chocolate. I want you to catch it, Babatunde. And as you catch it, I want you to unwrap it, and I want you to put it in your mouth virtually and say, and enjoy the virtual experience. Yeah. You look like you would like a Toblerone. So I've sent you Toblerone, a big pack. Yeah. But great question. So I'll give you a simple example. Many organizations say that they want to foster teamwork. You know, um, some organizations say they want to foster innovation, and they put these words as their core values. But the question is, what do we reward? Do we reward teamwork or do we reward individual contribution? So here is the problem. Some organizations say that they want collaboration as a behavior, as a core value, but they reward people in silos. They don't challenge people to do things that are different from their work. So if you are in sales, you are in sales. If you're in customer service, you're in customer. So they do not have collaborative performance management systems that then incentivize people. Some organizations say, oh, we want to reward people for their contributions. Or rather, we want people to perform, but actually, their reward system is built on longevity. So think about that. I hope I'm making the point. I'm just contrasting different things for you, Babatunde, and anybody else who is interested in that amazing question from Babatunde. So that's where the challenge is. Culturally, you are saying, oh, I want people to perform. Think about the federal government of Nigeria as a major employer in our society. If you ask the president of Nigeria, if you ask the head of service, the secretary to the government, what do we want? What behavior do we want to see in our public servants? They will say, oh, we want our public servants to perform. Okay, but how do we reward our public servants? We reward them based on longevity, not on performance. We reward them based on, have you spent enough time? Is it your turn? Are you due for promotion? Are you due for an increase? So it's a contradiction. If you reward people for longevity, for vesting, rather than for performance, then they will vest. The behavior you will get is sit down, look, I can't pay. But if you want people to perform, then you must build your reward architecture around performance as a cultural imperative. I hope I've helped Babatunde and anybody else who is interested in that very powerful question, because it speaks to something that we are going to explore very soon in the next few minutes as we continue on the program. Thank you again, Babatunde, and I hope you enjoyed your virtual chocolate. Yeah. Anybody else with a question? Thanks for the feedback, Babatunde. Very good question to get us thinking. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions? My producer says that I can take a couple more, but we have to wrap it up in the next 2 to 3 minutes. Don't be shy. Yes, I have here a question from Afisu Yusuf. And Afisu is asking, how does the reward system management influence the productivity in an organization where promotion is based on management discretion, not guided by the policy? Yeah, so there you have it. I mean, those are realities, right? I always tell the story about how we intervened in an organization many, many years ago, one of the top organizations in Nigeria in the oil and gas industry. And when we got there, they told us that, in as much as we have been doing promotion every year for the last 10 years, we've never done any appraisal. I'm like, sorry? They say, people don't really submit appraisal forms. I said, okay. So how do you promote? They say it's based on the discretion of the management. I said, oh, all right. So, hey, you have a policy and you flout the policy and you focus on management discretion. Okay, those are issues because that affects there's no evidence, it's not an evidence-based system, and it certainly has limitations. Okay, so to answer your question, Afisu, yes, it does impact productivity because here's what it happens. It goes to the qualitative sides of motivation and engagement. And people are wondering about what? About fairness, which is what we talked about, earlier, which is one of the principles that drive an effective reward system. So if people don't feel that the system is fair, I mean, sometimes in a really small organization, you could see where the lack of evidence-based reward decisions may still be fair because it's a smaller scope of people, it's a less political organization, and everybody knows who is faffing around and everybody knows who is doing great work. But as organizations become large and big, having a formal system of reward management is important. Again, it speaks to the question that you are saying, who is management? Who is this management anyway? What do we mean by management? Because a lot of that ambiguity, really stifles performance. So I would say that in a system where employees don't feel that the reward management practices are fair and transparent, and where employees may even feel that there is a policy that is being subverted and is not being followed, Then there is the appearance of impropriety. There is the appearance of um, a lack of equity, right? All of those things affect human performance. So it is better that in such an organization, you help them to go back to the drawing board if it's an organization you know or you work in, and you help them to see the importance of a structured um, and consistent approach to reward management, which is what we are proposing in our training. So maybe as we go along in the training, you would be able to pick up some things that you can, use to influence the leaders or the management of such an organization, so that indeed they can create and implement real effective systems for reward management. Short answer to your question: inequitable reward management systems that create a lack of fairness and create the perception of impropriety because things are being done discretionary, then that's a problem, right? There is always a rule for discretion, and we'll talk about it shortly. There's a part of reward that can be discretionary, but the core of your reward system cannot be discretionary. Yeah. And even in the discretionary reward management system, there is still some evidence. There is still plenty of structure as to how that discretion is applied. It is not arbitrary discretion. It is discretion, meaning that, like in discretionary pay, in performance-based pay, and so on and so forth, which we'll talk about. So thank you very much, Afisu Yusuf, for that question. I hope again that it was valuable. And since you have also asked a very intelligent and valuable question, you certainly are deserving of a chocolate. So please catch your chocolate. You sound like you like Mars. I'm not too sure, but it just sounds from the question like a Mars person. So I've sent you a Mars virtual chocolate. Enjoy it. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will proceed now. As I promised, and my producer is already knocking on my door, to talk about the drivers of reward management. And this speaks to some of the questions that were asked earlier. So, what drives reward? Study done by Brown and published in 2018 talks about the three things that drive reward: the internal relativities, the external relativities, and performance. And they speak to three words: fairness, flexibility, and affordability. So we start with affordability. Very simple. Affordability takes account of what? What have we achieved? Where does the money come from? And this is really important, in every organization, everybody has to ask this question. And if HR professionals are not asking this pertinent question and are motivating, if I say HR professional, you are saying, oh, our competitors in the industry are paying this, external relativities, but you are not asking the pertinent question: what can you afford? Then you're not a strategic HR person. You're not HR thinking and acting strategically. So what are the objectives? What is our long-term, what's the long-term contribution that people are making? And what is the potential for the future? It is on that basis of performance that we will determine reward. Then we can then look externally and say, okay, let's look at outside, what's happening, because we need to compete for talent in this world. Yeah. So we need to benchmark what other people are doing. But that benchmarking is not grounded on what other people are doing. It's grounded on our reality. So that is why, for example, and sometimes people, again, I love to use the football examples, and I apologize for those who are not huge fans of the round leather game, but there's a difference between the money that they pay in Real Madrid and the money they pay in Eimba. It's you cannot be playing for Eimba, or you cannot, let's even go to, you cannot be playing for Real Sociedad, or Deportivo La Coruna, and expect that you will earn the same money in Barcelona. There's a difference. There's a difference between Arsenal and Chelsea and Man U and Man City and Brighton and Luton FC. It's just the way it is. So you have to ask yourself as a company, where are you? What's your performance? What's your potential? And then you benchmark it appropriately to the external relativities. And then you come to the third part, which is now the internal equity conversation. So you say, okay, what are the different jobs that people do? What's the value of these jobs? Then you say, okay, but some people are operating at the same level in different jobs. Okay, at that level, what should they be earning? And then you start to talk about things like grading. Okay, how do we move people? And this is really important for small businesses, because a lot of small businesses don't have a grading system. And what that tells us is that people who work in such businesses don't have a sense of where they are going. So, I'm a teacher, for example. So there must be teacher one, teacher two, teacher three, senior teacher, assistant chief teacher, and so on and so forth. That system helps so that people can see the progress that is the expectation that they have, that you have of them, and the potential progress and contribution that they can make, and how that progress and how that contribution will be rewarded. So, this, my dear friends, are the drivers of reward: performance that speaks to affordability, external factors that speak to your flexibility because you want to attract the right people, and then fairness. I'll use another football example. So that's why sometimes football clubs may go out of a limb to go and attract a very high quality player, like when Bolton FC went out of their way to attract JJ Okocha from Paris Saint-Germain. They broke the bank. What were they trying to do? They understood that they had a performance aspiration that they had not achieved, and that the talent on ground was not delivering on that aspiration, but they had that aspiration. So, in pursuit of that aspiration, they were more flexible. They said, look, although we don't usually pay this type of sign on bonus, although we don't pay this type of weekly wages, we are ready to go out of our way. Even when the money they offered to JJ, to Austin Okocha, was even too small for him. But he too was looking at other factors: where he was in life, his age, the kind of society he wanted to live in, and he was always interested in playing in the Premiership. So he took the job, right? So that's how practically these things, these drivers work. And then when he got into the organization, of course, you now have to see, okay, internal equity. People are asking, who is this one? Oh? I heard that we are paying him so much sign-on fee. I heard that he has such a huge contract. Oh my God. Then you have people start worrying about equity. But what does that do? That then puts pressure on the person or culture to perform. Did he perform? Yes. He performed so well that he became captain of the team. He performed so well that it became the strategy of Bolton FC at a point was the playbook was pass the ball to Okocha. Whatever you do, don't think, don't stop, don't worry. Whatever, once you get the ball, pass it to Okocha. Did he deliver on the potential and did he make a significant long-term contribution? The answer is obvious. So reward is important, but we must understand where it comes from. And that's what the amazing research done by Brown shows us in terms of what drives reward and how organizations use these drivers to achieve the ultimate goal of sustainable competitive advantage. So we move now to talk about how to create a reward architecture. Oh, sorry, I think I mistakenly stopped the sharing of my screen. Let me just reshare the screen and we'll pick up from there. And I was saying that, so let's talk about reward architecture. And when we finish doing that, we'll pause and do a little activity to drive home some of the conversations we've had so far about reward. So look out for that. So the first part of your reward architecture, you remember that reward is part of the system, what we call the high performance work practices in any organization. So reward, and I'm saying this because reward does not exist in isolation. Let's not kid ourselves. Don't for a second think that just because you paid the highest amount of salary or that you had the best reward system in the world, that it means your organization will succeed. There is countless evidence of companies who are the top payers who attracted the best players but did not succeed. If it were by money, some of the clubs that in Saudi Arabia and clubs in Turkey and clubs even in the United States, they will be the best football clubs in the world. It's not always about money. So reward is part of the high performance work practices, but it's not in isolation. So you need to ask yourself, what is your reward philosophy? What is your reward policy? And then what are the strategic options for reward management? What's your reward strategy? So let's start with philosophy. Very simply, the philosophy of every organization is anchored on its values, on its beliefs. We are belief makers and we are belief consumers. It is based on what we believe and value that our organizations succeed. Organizations, unfortunately, sometimes espouse beliefs and values that they do not apply. So if you go to the website of most companies and organizations in Nigeria, you would see integrity as a value, for example. But everybody is going around giving, demanding, and collecting bribes. I guess maybe the word integrity has a different definition, which a friend of mine shared with me many years ago, and I think I've shared it here, but I will share it again just for the laughs. He says that Bisha, integrity be say, and I'm speaking in Nigerian pidgin, integrity be say, you promise the guy for that government agency, say you go broke him 1 million after that deal. After the deal, you broke him the 1 million. You are a man of integrity. So a government official asks you for a bribe, you accept, you do the transaction, you give the person the bribe, you are a man of integrity. So maybe the problem with Nigerian organizations, and I see some people laughing, is that our definition of integrity is warped. Well, I think there are some people in some government agency now that I saw this morning that EFCC has arrested or is going to arrest over some impropriety. So we know what integrity is. The point I'm making, though, is that there needs to be a relationship between your espoused values and the actions you take in your organization. So the critical question from a reward perspective is there an alignment between your values and your beliefs in your organization as you have espoused, as you have put on your website, and when we come into your office, we see it all over the place? Is there a relationship between that and your reward system? And just like the example I gave when I was asked the question earlier, that if you say that the purpose of your government agency is to perform, but and your core value is performance and results, but your reward system rewards vesting or time spent, then there's a mismatch. So here's the critical question I want you to be thinking about. What are the values in your organization? Whether espoused or real. But what are the core values? And what do those core values tell you the underlying philosophy of reward should be? I'm thinking about my core values now. At Learning Impact, our core values are two L's and two S's: leadership, learning, selling, and service. So I'm asking myself, and I hope my colleagues are asking the same question. If leadership, learning, selling, and service are our core values, how should that affect the philosophy of reward? I hope it's not a jam question. I hope we're getting it. So think about your organization. What are your core values? And how do those core values translate into that philosophy of how we should reward people? Reward policy speaks to things like pay levels. Pay levels talk about whether we are matching the market, whether we are leading the market, or whether we are lagging behind the market. It speaks to the general level of pay. Are we a payer? Are we a mid-tier payer? Or are we a below the market payer? So again, that's a policy issue. Part of reward policy is also pay structure. Are we an egalitarian organization or are we a hierarchical organization? An egalitarian organization is an organization where everybody's pay is pretty much the same. You know what I mean? Like if you look at the public service, there are very little differences between people's pay. Everybody pretty much earns, around certain figures across different levels. So if you look at the non-professional cadre, if you look at the professional cadre, if you look at the executive cadre, right? But in the private sector, you would see, especially in very commercial organizations, you would see a more hierarchical structure. You know, a good example is in the world of consulting. In the big consulting firms, I remember I was reminded by an acquaintance, someone I know today, about ICANN and ICANN exams. And I remember when we were writing ICANN, we would have people who were working in the big four consulting firms, and they would always laugh about the fact that, when you go into the driveway in the company, the disparity in the cars, in the parking lot, the disparity is so huge. The cars, the tuke car that the associates like them are driving versus the luxury cars that the partners are driving. That kind of thing. So huge disparity. So and same thing in investment banking, and in many cultures, where there's such a huge gap between people's pay. That hierarchical structure is also there. And again, the question to ask is that it must be tied to a philosophy that must be driven by certain values and beliefs that the organization has. And then you even have a policy issue around pay segments. Are people segmented? Is there a different pay structure? And again, back to banking, there's a different pay structure for people in currency trading, which is the most exotic of all banking jobs. The people who trade FX, the people who trade derivatives and stocks, those traders tend to have a different pay conversation. There tends to be a different pay conversation completely for salespeople. There tends to be a different pay conversation for people in risk management versus people in other parts of the back office or middle office. So are there segments? Is there a segmentation? Is there different complete policy because of the kind of focus that you want in a particular segment? Again, this has to be tied to your philosophy, to your strategy, to your values as an organization. And then what are the strategic options for reward? So relying on that philosophy that relies on your values and your culture, that dovetails into a policy, you don't have to ask yourself, what's your strategy? What are you going to do differently? Sometimes some organizations start to ask, what should we do around pay for performance? How do we link pay to performance more? How can we create more differentiated pay where, sometimes somebody who may even be a junior person could be earning significantly higher than a senior person? Because juniority and seniority is about influence, it's about leadership, it's about title, but it's not necessarily about results. So if a younger person or a junior person is producing better results, then let's pay the person higher. It's pay for performance. That's a strategic option. Another strategic option would be pay at risk. Organizations decide, I remember when my former employers decided at some point that from a segmentation perspective, all the people in business development, and this is a true story, were to earn the exact same salary, regardless of your grade. This is a real case study. A Nigerian business decided at some point that all the salespeople will be put on the exact same salary. So junior salespeople, their salary went up. Senior salespeople, their salary came down. Everybody's on the same salary. They created a pay at risk model. They said, look, and if you achieve the upside, which is if we achieve our target, oh my God, that year for 2 years, the bonuses they paid when that it was a temporary project, it didn't last forever. But in those 2 years, The bonuses they paid to salespeople was so much that the executives, they couldn't believe, because some of the bonuses were bigger than what the executives were earning. Executives who were not in the sales role, they couldn't believe it. But fair and square, this is the segmentation strategy we came up with, policy we came up with, and our strategy was pay at risk. And we got the good side of the risk, meaning that we got the upside. We performed, we achieved our targets, and the people in business development were compensated heavily. I wasn't in business development, so don't look at me. At that time, I had moved to HR. Concepts like total reward, which we'll talk about shortly, job evaluation and grading. There are organizations where they say that their strategy as far as reward is that you don't promote anybody, that what we do is to continuously enhance and enrich our jobs so that you only move to a higher level when two or three things happen. One is either you have enriched your job so much that your job is evaluated and graded at a higher level. So let's say, for example, you are a branch manager, your branch is a C branch. C branches are only headed by people who are assistant manager grade. Simple. The only way to become a manager is that your branch needs to become a B branch, a B level branch with a certain level of balance sheet and a certain level of cabal and P&L, as they say in the banking world. So here's how it's going to happen. You are going to work hard with your team to move your branch from a C branch to a B branch. That's one way you can become a manager. We won't just promote you. Can you see the difference between that and the public service? Where you say this person has been on assistant manager for 3 years, so he is now due for promotion. Nobody is due for anything. The only way you can become a manager is either number one, you grow your branch into a B branch, or number two option is that you find a job. There will be a vacancy in a B branch where they say B branch in a central business area, or B branch in Ikoyi, or B branch in what they call it in Old Aba Road, now has a vacancy because the former manager there has resigned, retired, or he has dropped dead. Then you will now apply for that job, and you will now be evaluated based on your talent and your previous contributions. So in such organizations, they don't promote people. They do benchmark grading and job evaluation. Some of you are used to this. Some of you are hearing about it for the first time. Some of you are in utter shock and disbelief. But many organizations run like this, especially foreign organizations in Nigeria. South African organizations, many of them have this model. So places like MTN, Nigeria, and many other South African owned organizations have a model like this or a variant of it, because they also try to situate it in the Nigerian context. Organizations then decide, okay, we want to do benchmark surveys. We want to be able to find out where, from time to time, our strategy this year is to go and do a survey of our competitors. So they get a consulting firm like Learning Impact, and then we go out and do a compensation survey and give them insights about where the rest of the market is so that they can benchmark themselves properly. And then some organizations also choose, as a matter of strategy, to go beyond just money, but to go to recognition and say, oh, this year we've decided our strategy is to come up with a recognition scheme. And it speaks to the question I was asked at the beginning about, so how can reward influence people's behavior? So if, for example, you wanted to push a particular behavior, then you could create a recognition program that promotes that behavior. That's why I find it funny that organizations have, again, long-term service award. And that's good. And there's nothing wrong with it. And then, you sometimes organizations throw so much into long-term service award. Oh, they give them 20 million naira, a car, whatever. It's nice. but you are incentivizing something long term, and which is a good thing because long term means stability and consistency. But also, long term could also mean complacency. Yeah. So you want to strike the balance. So sometimes organizations say, oh, our recognition scheme has been focusing just on long term. We want to change it. We want to change it to something that focuses on current contribution, something that focuses on innovation, something that focuses on leadership. So if there's a particular B or customer service, who is the most customer centric person in the organization, and we want to reward that person heavily. Sometimes organizations look at things like long-term incentive schemes. I remember, again, in my previous employers, we would look at something like, let's create a long-term incentive scheme where employee ownership, let's start becoming an employee-owned company. So you ask yourself, why would a company want to do that? It has to do with their strategy. It has to do with their culture. It has to do with their core value. There's something they are trying to achieve. So you hear some companies say we're a 100% employee-owned company, meaning that in addition to the entrepreneur, there are other co-owners. They have fractional shares in the company. Why would someone do that? Because they want the people to take ownership. Because ownership is a cultural imperative. So you can't say, oh, I want people to take ownership, I want to take ownership, but you're not giving them ownership. Let the scheme be there. Let there be a means to have ownership. And then maybe ownership will increase. It's sometimes a chicken and egg situation. But I think the important thing is to understand that these options exist. So at this point, again, I'm going to pause. Maybe you guys have some questions or comments or thoughts. We are 18 minutes away from our close, which is good timing. And it's good time for us to do our little activity that we promised, which I'm going to be showing next. So if we have one question or comment before I jump into the activity, and then we will have our final teaching and we will wrap it up for this morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world. Questions? Comments? Is all of this making sense? For those who are wondering, yes, it has been recorded. It is being recorded and it will be made available to members of the group. If you are not yet on the WhatsApp group, please join the WhatsApp group. I believe my colleagues shared the link to the WhatsApp group. No, they did not. I would appreciate it if someone can share the link to the WhatsApp group so that people can join. Because it's on the WhatsApp group that you'll see the link to the video and the recording. Okay, so let's jump right into it then. A little activity for everybody. Can you see what's on the screen? I would like us to spend the next 5 minutes doing this. Everyone, please, let's do it. It's really important. It's going to be transformational. List out the core values of your company and describe each of them in one short sentence. So, like my company, I said our core values are leadership, learning, selling, and service. Leadership is about being a person of influence. Learning is about a lifelong commitment to continuous development. Selling is about consultatively positioning our products in the hearts and minds of everybody we meet. Service is about recognizing that our customers are king and queen and that we will do everything within our capacity to satisfy them. Okay, now go on ChatGPT, Gemini, or any other AI and use this prompt that I'm suggesting. The values of my organization are leadership, which means this, and learning, which means that, and this, customer service, which means this, and sales, which means that. What should our overall reward philosophy be? How should we approach issues like pay levels, pay structure, and pay segments? And what aspects of reward strategy should we be most concerned about and why? Please respond in a concise one-page document that I can present to my board. Is everybody doing this? You have 5 minutes to do this. I believe in 4 minutes, you should have finished copying and pasting or typing and pasting what I have said because ChatGPT only needs 30 seconds or Gemini only needs 30 seconds to answer you. Okay, we have 2 minutes to go. Has anybody completed it? Has ChatGPT answered you? Anyone out there? I hope we are doing the activity. Oh.
Yes, we are.
Excellent. All right, so we have to pause now with this activity. Does anybody have any feedback from ChatGPT? Yes, no. Has anybody completed it? You can indicate by saying or by posting on the group. Yes, no. Looks like nobody did it. We just took a break.
I did.
Okay, so say yes.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else on the chat? Yes, no? Or did we all just take a break? So what did your Babatunde ChatGPT is thinking? Ha ha ha. So Folarin, is there anything interesting that you saw there? Just very quickly, very briefly. Would you like to share with us? You can put on your mic and enjoy also. Who said yes? Is there anything ChatGPT revealed to you? You can put on your mic and contribute. So we're waiting on Folani and Joy. Do they want to share anything? Or they are too shy to share? So we only have Folani, Joy, and Babatunde. Babatunde says that ChatGPT is still thinking. Folani hasn't been able to give us the feedback, and Joy also hasn't been able to give us the feedback. So let's move on to the final part of our conversation. I guess um, the prompt is there if you are interested in it. I think AI helps us to think and act faster. So we're very excited about using AI to help us refine our thinking. But it's really a question that I thought that you should answer. What are our values and how do our values affect our reward practices and philosophies and different options for strategies as an organization? It's something that you certainly should be positioning within your organization. Finally, we talk about total reward management, which is one of the strategic options and is considered one of the high performance practices that organizations who have a total reward management framework tend to outperform organizations who do not have a total reward framework. So, total reward is about looking at four or so issues. First is cash. So, how much do we earn, right? So we look at things like your base salary or your annual wage, your annual incentive, your bonus, and so on and so forth. Then there is the concept of total direct compensation, which includes total cash, but speaks to things like stock and equity in the company, being a co-owner, as well as shares, long-term invest rewards and incentives, that you have, that you are given that are tied to your performance, right? So that also then includes your total cash, and then you now have the concept of total direct compensation. Then you now have other things that organizations layer on in terms of retirement, which in Nigeria is compulsory, health insurance, which is also compulsory, things like staff welfare and holidays and paid vacations. And some organizations, even at certain levels, will pay you not only to have a vacation, but we even give you travel allowance for your vacation with your family and things like that. Then you also have other things that are different levels, as you become a big boy or a big girl, they start to do professional membership, club membership, you can now, become a member of IBB Golf Club or Ikoyi Club in Lagos or some country club in Port Harcourt or in Kano. Yeah. And you can get a car, whether it's you have and even among the cars, there are levels in the car. So all of these are also part of now what we define as total remuneration, that includes all of those total cash, total direct compensation in terms of incentives, as well as other um, active benefits that you get. And then you now have what we call engagement factors that have to do with what's the quality of work, what is the efforts around work-life balance, how inspiring is the organization, what's the quality of the people you work with, what's the environment like, what are the opportunities for growth and advancement. This is where you start talking about things like training and exposure and conferences and different things that organizations do to challenge people and to engage them. This, my friends, is the concept of total reward. So, total reward is not just about cash, short-term variable. It also is about long-term variable, passive benefits, active benefits, as well as engagement factors. I mean, engagement factors are huge. Things like, for example, having a creche, where you can bring in your children, having a room where women can breastfeed, having a gym where we can do yoga and so on and so forth. There's just, endowing a charity where we can go out together and go and, clean up the street or take care of people in old people's homes and so on. Whatever it is, all of these things speak to those engagement factors. The point, total reward philosophy or total reward strategy is powerful. It looks at reward not just as money, but also as consisting of passive, active benefits as well as other engagement factors. And it has been shown and demonstrated to improve employee motivation and improve employee commitment and performance. Yeah. Olufumilayo says that Gemini suggested an expectation bonus. When a customer sends a feedback about an employee exceeding their expectations, a bonus is given or a company-wide shout out. Exactly. So you see so I imagine that one of the things that you had said, Olufumilayo, was that maybe one of your values is customer centricity. Yeah. So how does that tie into our reward philosophy? The way it ties in is that we come up with a shout out to people or a cash reward to people. Yeah. So in my organization, Learning Impact, for example, one of our values is learning. So we challenge our staff every week with a learning challenge, and whoever wins the learning challenge gets paid some cash. Yeah. As well as gets recognized, on the staff group. So that's our own way of having a direct line of sight between what we claim to value and the way we reward people. Because if we don't reward, if we claim to value something and we don't reward people along the lines of what we claim to value, then it means we don't really value it. Yeah. Excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, what have we learned today? We spent time talking about strategic reward management. So, in terms of our learning outcomes, we have understood some of the theoretical foundations of reward management, equity theory, the law of demand and supply, self-determination theory, agency theory, human capital theory, and so on and so forth, and how those things are important. We've learned what reward management is. We've learned 6 reasons why reward management is important. We've learned about the drivers of reward, both the internal, the external, and of course, the most important, the anchor, the actual performance. We've learned about reward architecture and how that consists of philosophy and policy and strategy. And we've looked at how to create that philosophy from your values, and we demonstrated it with ChatGPT. And thank you so much, Olufumilayo. Certainly deserving of a virtual chocolate. So I'm going to send you a bounty chocolate. It is a chocolate, it's a coconut flavored, and it sounds like you like that kind of coconut flavor kind of thing. So enjoy that bounty chocolate. So we talked about those reward architecture in terms of your values, your philosophy, your policy, as well as some of the strategic options that we explored. And then we ended with a conversation about reward management. If you haven't used the AI prompt or you are still trying to use it, it's valuable. I think it will help you think about what you're currently doing with reward and maybe highlight for you as a HR leader or as a business and organizational leader where some of the gaps are in your reward and maybe why your reward system is not really delivering the culture that you want, because that's the point of reward. It helps to create the culture that we want. So maybe this could help you and your organization to be better along those lines. I promised a short announcement at the end that, yes, you see, I knew it. Olufemilayo, you see, I am spiritual. I know it's mainly in the spirit of the Christmas season. I know Father Christmas is delivering the right virtual goods. We can't wait for you to deliver the right physical goods, Mr. Barrow, and stop all these your virtual things. Yeah. So here is a bit of an important announcement. In the new year, we are going to be rejigging the Champions of HR series in terms of its focus as well as its content. We're going to work as a team to go back and look at our content. We've spent the last 2 years. The first year was really spent around just strategic HR, defining it, trying to build the strategic HR muscle of our participants around the 4 areas of strategic HR as defined by Dave Ulrich of Michigan Ross Business School, of as a strategic partner, HR as a change manager, HR as a people champion, and HR as an administrative expert. And then the year after, which is this year, we sort of focused on looking at some of these high performance work practices in HR, whether it was performance management or learning and development, talent management, succession planning, and even now, compensation and reward and recognition. Next year, our vision is around now HR as a strategy person. And really, that's where we want to anchor. That's where we want to continue to grow. We've dealt with some of the fundamentals. Now we want to look at building not just you to be a HR champion. So get ready for this. We are building you to be a performance champion because that's really the core. So don't be surprised if the Champions of HR program becomes the Performance Champion program. Yeah, so watch out for that. And then we start to focus on performance, which is really the point of HR, which is at the heart of our existence. We exist to ensure that we can take the human capital in our organization, work it with the systems in the organization to deliver performance and results for the organization. That is the purpose of HR. And if you haven't heard it before, I will say it again. The purpose of human resources management is that function within an organization that exists to harness the full potential of human capital through the system of the organization so that the people and the organization achieve results, achieve performance, and achieve sustainable competitive advantage for the organization. That's my definition of what HR is. It's not about making people happy. It's not about ensuring that people are motivated. Those things are part of it, but there is a bigger picture. The bigger picture is performance, its results, and its sustainable competitive advantage. And once we frame ourselves in the HR world along those lines, we will add value to our organizations. So, ladies and gentlemen, Merry Christmas in advance. Have a happy and exciting New Year celebration also. And some of you are going to be on holiday. Some of you are traveling. Some of you are in transit with your trips. We wish you very safe journey and journey mercies as you go along. And we all look forward to a really happy and prosperous 2026, much better than 2025. And we pray that we all have so many things to be grateful for in spite of the challenges of 2025, and that we look forward to even better in 2026 and beyond on the Champions of HR program or the Performance Champions program in 2026, and with your organizations and with our company, Learning Impact. So I'd like to thank you all and enjoy your evening. And as usual, so long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye, goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Goodbye. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Very welcome.
Right.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
All right. And please make sure that you do that homework about reward for philosophy, tying it to your
Thank you so much.
your culture and your values and so on. It's really valuable, and get AI to help you. Yeah.